Thank you, Harry. We'll take some questions. I first want to exercise my prerogative and ask a question. I'm going to not shoot myself by violating one of my principal rules, which is never ask more than a one-part question, and I'm going to do that. First, I want to put the two things I want to ask as a fact confirmation so they don't count as questions. And they're not in the book. Carlin Barker, one of your favorite reporters, tells me that she had always heard that before she arrived at the Post in 1971, that when you were a foreign editor and you were famous for pitching for your own reporter's stories to be on page one and they never would make it, that at one point one of your adversaries hired a violinist to come in from the outer sanctums and start playing as you were making your pitch. Is that true? The second one comes from Tom Zito.
Am I supposed to remember the first question before you ask?
Okay, answer that one.
First of all, you got your facts wrong. It wasn't while I was foreign editor, it was while I was Metro editor. Second of all,
what happened?
It was true. People who were jealous of me for my brilliant presentation during the news conference. It was harder to get a foreign story on page one than a local story. But the only people who automatically got a story on page one was the national staff, you know. They could afford to sleep late.
Okay, the other one is it true, and I don't know whether this was prompted by Woodward and Bernstein or just Bernstein, or maybe it's not true, it's just apocryphal, that during the Watergate stories, you kept a bottle of Maalox on your desk.
It's against the federal regulation to ask a disabled person about his malady.
Okay, now for the real question that I have. There's only really two parts. One is, how much, in retrospect particularly, how much reporting on Watergate do you think Ben Bradley was doing behind your back? And number two, what did you not know about Watergate that you've learned about in the process of writing this book?
Oh, and I'm not aware of Ben Bradley doing any extraordinary reporting beyond the kinds of things that Ben would naturally do. He was very, very well connected in Washington. I think he was better connected across a wider spectrum than anybody else at the paper. So I'm sure he came up with things, but I don't remember any specific lead that he provided that turned out to be accurate. That doesn't mean he was wrong, but I just don't remember, and I can't answer the question. The other one was what? You answered multiple.
How much have you learned about Watergate that you didn't know in the course of reporting this book? What new have you turned up?
Well, the best thing, I mean, in writing this book, I'd been exposed for years by people who would call to interview me, and as they were writing debunking books about Watergate. And some of their propositions were intriguing, but I found out that there's a whole cottage industry out there, as there should be, trying to dispossess the Post from its role in Watergate. That's the way it ought to work. I have no problem with it. But I learned nothing new writing this book. What I did learn while I was editor, I was already editor-at-large, I was already retired from my responsibilities at the Times-Union. And a former FBI agent who had headed the office in Albany while I was editor, and we had known each other and we had talked to each other. And when Mark Felt revealed himself to be Deep Throat, he called to tell me that he, in the 1970s, had been charged to investigate Mark Felt because he had been involved with some underhanded operations for which he eventually was found guilty. In the course of this investigation, and he was pardoned by Reagan, Felt was, he found out that Felt would sit down every afternoon with 3 or 4 high-ranking colleagues. He was the number 2 man at the FBI at the time. And they would discuss what their various operations had found out about Watergate, and they were shaping what information would be relayed to Woodward. That I did not know. We spread that across the top of the pages of the Times-Union, and it taught me then that these stories never end, that other people will come and discover things that have happened. You ask, why did this FBI agent wait that long? Good question. But we at the Post never found that. That's a story by itself that I want to get into here, but it is a certainty that Watergate remains, somewhat to my astonishment, of interest to young people. I regularly speak to groups of high school students each year, and they're interested. They read All the President's Men, and they want to know. And whatever I can tell them, I share with them. But it encourages me that Watergate, at least in some areas, remains instructive to young people, because after all, it's the young people who are going to have to deal with the real issues that are facing this country.
Questions? Ralph?
A lot of people came to know you through Jack Warden's portrayal of you in the movie. How much of that is verbatim? Did Woodward really ask you who Charles Colson was? And did you really say, "You stupid son of a bitch"? You know who President Nixon is, right?
I would never say, "You stupid son of a bitch." And I resent the suggestion that I might.
The rest of it true?
No.
Mart?
In the 40 years since Watergate, the entire media landscape has undergone a profound change. And there are a lot of people who say that the way the Washington Post covered Watergate in 1973 would not be possible today because of all the instant reaction to anything that's said anywhere. Like your take on that?
Well, I think that makes a good deal of sense. I mean, the whole dynamics of the story would change, right? There would be blogging, there would be this, there would be that. On the one hand, it would accelerate sort of the tipster field, right? On the other side, it would confuse matters. Again, it would be substantially, it would be what people think happened rather than what they know happened, which in recent times, as we all know, has led many of our respectable newspapers to stumble as they tried to keep up and all of a sudden reported things that were not factual, that did not stand the test. I mean, the very processes of newspapering have changed. It's so instantaneous. When I was in the catbird scene, you know, the reporter went out, he talked to an assignment editor. He came back, he talked, or she talked to the assignment editor again. A copy editor read it. Maybe if it was a story of some magnitude, a managing editor read it. And there were all these layers of second guessing, if nothing better. And there was time. There was time. And then 8 hours later, or 10 hours later, some reader picks it up. And all of that has evaporated. It has evaporated even in the print business. It is now instantaneous. All newspapers have their own internet outlets. They go with it. They want to go with it. They want to be first. First counts. Well, first counted in my day too. But it should be first and right, you know. I think it has complicated it enormously, and I cannot begin to tell you how different it is. It is not a world I recognize.
Harry, Mike Eisbrow. This is a pretty heavy hitter bunch of
people here, all of a certain age. And as I listened to you, and you had some very sage words, I thought to myself, my goodness, he's preaching to the choir. And that there's a
That's right.
tremendous disconnect between those who practice journalism today and those of us who practiced it 30, 40 years ago. How do you bridge that disconnect, if at all?
I don't know how. I think it needs to be bridged. I think the journalistic validity, as I said, does not depend upon the format as much as I would like it to, but that's last year's dream. But to make sure that the content is reliable, that is the basis. And how do I make sure that the content is reliable? I don't know. I mean, you want to persuade people to be of that thought, to make that a priority, to be willing to pay money for it. It's a market-driven situation, and I don't, at this moment, don't see strong market forces that give me a great deal of hope. In that context, I should say, the Jeff Bezos thing interests me. When it happened, I messaged Don Graham and I said, I'm terribly sad, I'm terribly sorry. And he said back, he says, don't be so sad, don't be so sorry. He said, because, and here now I'm adding to his word, but his meaning was, he and his colleagues had tried everything they could that they knew how to do it, and what was happening is each year they were losing more readers, each year they were losing more advertising. And whatever they tried, and they tried a lot of things, it didn't work. I think the fatal error for all print publications was they gave it away free at the beginning, and we all know in life when you give things away free, they're not valued very much. And now that you want to impose a price tag on it, there's great pushback. People don't want to pay for it.
Yes.
I apologize if you already addressed this in your book, but between Woodward and Bernstein, who was the better typist?
Who's the best? I haven't got the foggiest.
Myron?
Throughout the book, yet your great respect for the Post as an institution, for Ben Bradley as an editor, for Kay Graham as a publisher, comes through. But one of the things that you were caught up with was Ben's concept of management, which was creative tension, putting one department against the other and so on. And that worked for you sometimes it did not work for you. What did you do, having experienced that, what did you do when you became the editor-in-chief of the Times-Union?
Thank you, Mike. I made a very conscious decision that I would not replicate Bradley's way of operating. And because there were many, well, I succeeded within that creative tension arena, but it wasn't without cost. I mean, we lost a number of very, very good people who just didn't put up with that guff. And they went on to very fine careers elsewhere. They should have had that career at the Washington Post. So I definitely did not put my colleagues, editors, into contention with each other. The other thing I didn't do is I didn't emasculate my managing editor. I thought a managing editor should manage. And I gave that all my managing editors, I had 3, room to do that. And that, I think we did a good job in Albany. We brought that paper, which was nondescript, and we made it a very good paper with the highest circulation, highest readership that it ever was to enjoy was during those years that I was editor, supported by these managing editors and other editors and reporters. No, I took the right instruction from creative tension. Jane Maxwell.
Yeah.
Bill Peel, ABC.
You're next, Jane.
Technology keeps changing. You mentioned it. 10 years from now, we will see a print edition of the New York Times on our doorstep anymore. What do you think?
Look, I'm 84 years old, and you know what I'm going to say. Of course there's going to be a printed New York Times. And I hope there will be. And I think one of the future for the Washington Post will be, instead of a local paper, which worked for me when I was Metro editor, right? That it is a national paper, that it will find its audience in niches throughout the country. I think the Times already is finding its audience in niches around the country. The Wall Street Journal is doing it. I don't know if USA Today is doing it or not doing it, but it's trying to do it. So I think the Times will survive. I hope it will survive. It should survive.
Harry,
Yes.
I want to know what the secret yearnings that you had when you came to this country and that you could fulfill.
I've never thought about, see, I was 9 years old, so my secret yearnings weren't all that interesting. I'll tell you what my behavior was. The minute I got into that cab, when we got off the Aquitania, and we rode the taxi cab to the Bronx to my uncle's apartment where we stayed for a week or two, that minute I started becoming an American. And I worked very hard and very happily and very enthusiastically, threw myself into the job of becoming an American. I learned English very quickly. I made a point of forgetting German. I became absorbed in all the attributes of an American boyhood. I joined the Boy Scouts. I played baseball and football and went on hikes and tied knots and did semaphore, God knows. And I didn't date girls till I was well into my teens.
Before Harry comes up and signs his wonderful book, I want to close with one last news you can use question, prompted by some anecdotes of his early in the book, but without specific detail that I crave. Would you please tell us about either the greatest expense account you ever submitted or the best, most creative one you ever approved, whether closing your eyes or not?
First of all, my expense accounts were very, very modest. I always told the truth. I never exaggerated. And I only put down meals that I really had and drinks that I really swallowed. That's number one. What was the other part of the question? What was the most creative? There is no question that the single most creative writer of newspaper expense accounts is the late departed and lamented Anatole Schub. Anatole Schub was a foreign correspondent, and he was a very good foreign correspondent, very well informed, good writer, intelligent, and a terrific creative writer.
Harry, thank you so much. That was terrific. I hope you'll all come up here and buy his book. And I hope we see you October 15th, a Tuesday, for Linda Ellerby. Thank you.
Thank you.